Everyone, welcome to our webinar from impressions to admissions. Hi Michelle. How Programmatic bridges the conversion gap. It's really good to see so many of you here already. I feel like I see a lot of different countries represented, which is really nice. I know some of you are in Europe, so thank you very much, because I know it's quite late where you are at the moment. So thank you for joining us. We're also very aware of the eclipse that's happening tonight, so rest assured that we will let you go before that. I hope you get to see it. So in case you don't know me, I'm Laurine Philippe. I'm Exhibitor Relations Manager at the Boxoffice company. Some of you will know us, but some others might not. So before we dive into the session and I introduce you to the team who will be speaking today, we just wanted to show you a quick video of what we do at Boxoffice.
One, please.
At the heart of cinema lies relentless innovation, a visionary force that first brought stories to life with the magic of moving images.
Great shot, kid. That was 1 in a million.
For over a century, we've been more than just witnesses to this transformation. We've been a driving force behind it, building and connecting audiences across the globe with the films they love through cutting-edge solutions.
Jump?
Hold on to your butts.
Starting with the world's most comprehensive movie data set to drive audiences to your theater across every search platform worldwide. Online marketing tools that help cinemas engage, attract, and retain moviegoers. And a real-time database of showtimes and movies trusted by Hollywood's biggest studios that turns data into decisions that shape the future of cinema. Our media channels reach billions, keeping movie enthusiasts connected to the stories they adore.
Toss.
But our mission goes beyond the solutions we provide. It's about building lasting partnerships and championing your vision and success through every setback and every major stride. It's about ensuring every theater finds its audience and every audience finds its story. And it's about more than just filling seats, but creating unforgettable experiences, driving results, and shaping the future of cinema together.
Right. So back to today's webinar. For this session, we would really love to hear from you. So we encourage you to interact with us as much as you can throughout the presentation. We'll be asking you a few questions using the polls, which should be in the top right-hand corner, if I'm not mistaken. You can also ask questions using the chat section, which should be at the bottom right of your screen. And so we'll be keeping an eye on all your questions and make sure that we answer them at the end, because we will be having a Q&A session at the end. Speaking of which, I think we just launched a quick poll. So if you could tell us at the moment which of these digital marketing channels you're using on a regular basis, because we're very curious, that would be helpful. And maybe you're not using any, which is also absolutely fine. But yeah, feel free to let us know. And so next slide, please. Thank you. So again, before we go into the heart of the session, if you need a quick reminder of what programmatic advertising actually is, essentially it's the automated buying and selling of online advertising space. So let's say you want to run some ads. Instead of manually choosing where your ads appear, what happens is that we buy a placement for your ad live, only at the exact moment that the right person is looking at their screen, whether it's a laptop or their mobile. And so basically, programmatic allows you to reach your relevant target audience wherever they are on the web. And because the buying of the ad placement happens in real time, we can continuously optimize campaigns based on what's working. So you may have attended our first webinar that we held, I think, in February. That was, earlier this year, where we covered the basics. So I'll just add the link in the chat just after I start speaking. So if you'd like to watch it again, whatever, on the link. But so the idea today isn't really to go back over the basics because we covered that last time, but rather to give you an update on what we've been doing since that webinar. So the campaigns that we've worked on, most importantly, what we've learned from them. And so I think maybe Malcolm just launched a couple of new polls. So if you could tell us as well if you have already used programmatic display and also interactive ads, we would really, really like to know. And I think that's it for this one. Oops, I lost the meeting just here. Perfect. Can you change the slide maybe, Malcolm?
Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, is the sound okay for everybody? Because I'm getting a bit of feedback. I don't know whether that makes any difference to anyone else, but you can let us know.
I think.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, guys. And so to talk through all of this, so the updates, the campaigns that we've done over the past few months, I'm joined today by Malcolm, who just spoke here, who will introduce the topic a bit and define what we call the conversion gap. We also have Graham Watt, who will take us through a handful of case studies and share some of the key insights and learnings that we've gathered from these campaigns over the past few months. Malcolm, sorry, I think it's still the older slide that's showing. I don't know if I can. Yeah, thank you very much. And then, yes, as I said earlier, we'll move to a Q&A. So please feel free to note down any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them at the end of the session. And with that, I'll hand it over to Malcolm.
Thank you very much indeed. Really great for that so many people have turned up, and I know there's people from all over the world, so it was fantastic. When we started our programmatic journey 8 months ago, we needed to understand what problem we were actually trying to solve. So before Graham gets into some of the detailed learnings, I need to explain what the conversion gap is, as this explains the unique role that programmatic and the MediaKoi interactive ads play in promoting films and selling tickets. So first of all, I'd like to look at the sort of what we'd call the traditional film marketing funnel. When we market films and cinemas, they're really two complementary jobs. So studios, on the one hand, need to maximize reach. They want as many people as possible to discover and engage with their films. Exhibitors need to maximize revenue, and they want to convert that awareness into ticket sales. Traditionally, those have been measured separately. Studios celebrate impressions and reach. Cinemas celebrate admissions and box office. This is a gap in continuity itself, but it's not the conversion gap. So if we then look at the funnel through the lens of primary online ad channels, next slide, please. Thank you. There's always been a missing piece. So most marketing channels work best at one end of the funnel or the other. Social ads, video, YouTube, sort of traditional display ads. These are excellent at creating awareness and engagement. At the other end, at the sort of lower end of the funnel, the conversion end of the funnel, the high intent users, search, SEO, our Showtimes products, the Google One Box, are excellent at capturing people who already know what they want to watch. The challenge is the space in between, the point where somebody has gone from that looks interesting to I'm ready to book. And this is what we're calling the conversion gap. It's the gap between generating impressions and generating admissions. So this is where we believe that programmatic and the MediaKoi interactive ads offer the most value to both cinemas and studios. And if we look at that in more detail, just to see how that all works together, we can see where this bridges the gap. So at the top of the funnel, again, programmatic display is finding audiences through the open web, where 65% of consumers, where consumers spend 65% of their time online. We can reach audiences at enormous scale, whilst also targeting highly relevant segments, whether they're horror fans, superhero enthusiasts, or just families looking for weekend entertainment. Programmatic on its own is efficient at finding audiences and delivering reach, but it doesn't traditionally deliver sales. And this is where the MediaKoi ads come in. As you can see from the example on screen, which we might just play again if that's all right, so you can see what's going on. Instead of serving a static banner, we can deliver rich interactive creative that encourages people to watch trailers, like the one on screen, browse film information, and actively engage with the content without leaving the advert. And then the final step, also included in the advert, rather than asking people to remember the film and search for it later, we present live geo-targeted showtimes directly within the advert itself, allowing them to book immediately at their local cinema. So in a single customer journey, we're moving audiences from awareness through to engagement and through to conversion. In other words, from impressions to admissions. The next hurdle we had when we were looking at this a few months ago was how do we establish a means to track the revenue and admissions at a cinema level? Because this isn't readily available to the studio network, and there was no mechanism for it. So to help make this more seamless for both studios and cinemas, we created the Cinema Ad Network. This is not advertising on cinema websites. This is programmatic advertising being run, campaigns being run by us. We called it CAN, and if we had two of them, we'd call it the CAN-CAN. I think that's a little French thing for you there, Lorraine. And how does this actually work? So simply put, the studio funds the marketing program, but each cinema gets its own dedicated campaign. That means the advertising is tailored specifically to that cinema with its own showtimes embedded into the MediaKoi creative. We can also use first-party audience data from every participating cinema, again, just for their own campaigns, and so therefore completely ring-fenced to help target the right audiences. And then we'll track everything to see what happens after someone either sees or interacts with the ad. And that's really the important bit. We're not just reporting on reach and frequency. We can track through to conversions and calculate return on ad spend. So for the studio, you get the reach and scale of programmatic. For the cinema, you get relevant local advertising that can drive admissions. And for both, you get something that traditional advertising has struggled to provide, which is a clear line from impressions to admissions. And as a byproduct, a very positive one, I think, in my opinion, is a tighter marketing partnership between the studios and cinemas. So everybody wins at the end of the day. So Graham is now going to share what we've learned, the campaign results we've seen so far, the factors driving high return on ad spend, and how we believe this approach can become an increasingly important part of every cinema's marketing strategy. And if you have any questions about any of this, please pop them in the comments next to this event. Graham, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Malcolm. So yeah, thanks for covering what programmatic actually is and what that conversion gap actually looks like, and a little bit about the Cinema Ad Network and how that actually operates. I would say that's what the kind of theory is behind the campaigns, but what we want to show you now is what all of that looks like in practice with real data from real campaigns that we've actually ran at Boxoffice. So every number that I show you on the next several slides, it comes from real live campaigns that we've ran over the past year. These aren't case studies that we're borrowing from someone else's playbook. This is all our own data, measured in the same way every time, from impression all the way through to admission. So these numbers basically show you what happens when you turn programmatic advertising on. So if we start with the kind of big picture and the blended view across all of our programmatic campaigns that we've run to date, we've covered 32 different campaigns, covering a genuinely broad mix of titles, everything from big hitters like The Odyssey and Wicked for Good, through to Toy Story 5, Masters of the Universe, and of course, Spider-Man Brand New Day. Different studios, different genres, different audiences, all running through the same programmatic engine. If you add it all up, here's where we land. 12 million impressions, 31,000 transactions that we can trace directly back to a programmatic ad, and $1.1 million in attributed revenue. But the real number that matters the most is the one in your middle of the screen there, the big circled one, 17-to-1 return on ad spend. So for every dollar that a cinema is putting in, they're getting 17 back. So if you've always thought of display campaigns as a little bit of a brand awareness channel, which it is in a sense, this actually changes that conversation, because now the headline is that we can see that we are getting a real return on ad spend with these ads and the programmatic ad buys. So that's the headline, but let's pull apart and see exactly where that data actually comes from. Firstly, I just wanted to quickly show you a couple of examples of what these creatives actually look like when they're live. So you can see a number of creatives on the screen there, all built in-house by Boxoffice on the MediaKoi platform. Although these look like static images on your screen, they are actually HTML5 ad formats when they're served to the user. So they can do exactly like what Malcolm just showed you on the Spider-Man ads. The user can watch the trailer, they can find the local showtimes, they can click through to book, just adding that extra engagement that you don't normally get with static image ads. Now, we wanted to really kind of deep dive into this one particular case study, which was the universal pilot of the Cannes network, which they decided to trial with the Odyssey, obviously Universal's big Christopher Nolan release, one of the biggest theatrical events of the year. So this is the creative that we built alongside Universal to support this campaign. This was a dedicated cinema ad network pilot using the film's own key art. And you can see that this was ready to drop into any participating circuit at the moment they came on board. So we actually ran this campaign across five different circuits in total, 70 locations. We had on board Epic Theatres, Flix Brewhouse, MGR Theatres, Showcase Cinemas, and Studio Movie Grill. And we ran the campaign for a 2-week flight, so from July 13th through to July 25th. So why does this matter? Why am I saying that this is the cinemas that we actually ran the campaign for? The reason being is the way the Cannes network actually works. Rather than having one blanket campaign, the cinema ad network actually builds an individual campaign for every single cinema. So we pull in the cinema's own showtimes directly into the ad unit. So there's no competitor showtimes that appears alongside theirs. It's literally their own showtimes. We also use their own first-party data which we then use for targeting. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We then also track the cinema's own conversions, and we report back on reach, frequency, and return on ad spend all at the cinema level rather than as one campaign. So a studio really isn't just buying reach here. They're buying reach that's relevant right down to the individual showtimes for particular cinemas. So in terms of the results, we managed to deliver 3.2 million impressions for this campaign, a frequency of 2.6, which means that on average, the user was seeing the ad 2.6 times. That's a real sweet spot where people are reminded about the movie without actually getting annoyed for seeing the ad too much. And then a 69% viewability, which means most of the impressions were actually seen on screen rather than just technically served. And most importantly of all, we had a 10-to-1 return on ad spend for the campaign. Just to pause on that 10-to-1 for a second, I just want to highlight that is not a blended figure where we're pulling in ticket sales for all the different movies that were shown at the cinemas at that time. This is filtered specifically to Odyssey admissions only, so no cross-sale from other releases. So that's $10 back for every dollar spent on verified title-specific sales alone for this particular campaign. So moving on to a cinema that we've been working quite a lot with on the programmatic side, which is Studio Movie Grill. I'm going to highlight a couple of campaigns. Firstly, Spider-Man Brand New Day, and also The Devil Wears Prada 2. Again, you can see the creatives that we built alongside Studio Movie Grill for these campaigns. Just to draw your attention to the creative on the far right-hand side here. One of the things that we can actually do with these creatives is we don't need to just advertise the movie that we're targeting. You can see what Studio Movie Grill done here. They had a specific menu that they were showing, they were serving alongside The Devil Wears Prada 2. So we actually used the ad unit to not only promote the movie, but also promote that menu. So you can actually do some really clever things if you want to promote your loyalty program, if you have like a specific cocktail that you're serving with the movie, whatever it may be, we can actually integrate those into the ad units themselves as well. So looking at the data for these two campaigns, if we cut it by title rather than as a circuit overall, you can see two genuinely strong results that just look very different in scale. So Spider-Man Brand New Day, we achieved 402,000 impressions. Again, a really good viewability rate of just under 60%, but most importantly, an outstanding 48-to-1 return on ad spend, which is an amazing result, even with a strong circuit like Studio Movie Grill. And then The Devil Wears Prada 2, slightly more impressions, 480,000 impressions. Again, strong viewability at 60% and a really good 16-to-1 return on ad spend. Now, just to kind of highlight the gap there, we obviously have one achieving a 48-to-1 and one achieving a 16-to-1. This is not a performance problem. This is really driven by the particular demand for that title. Obviously, Spider-Man Brand New Day, one of the year's biggest tentpole releases, is pulling from a much bigger, already primed audience who are actively searching for it. And naturally, that actually lifts our conversions when we run these campaigns as well. The Devil Wears Prada 2, working from a smaller built-in fan base, and a 16-to-1 return off that base is a really, really strong result. So same circuit, same targeting playbook, both titles winning, but just starting from different points on the demand curve for that particular movie. And that's exactly the kind of title-by-title insight that we can really garner from running these campaigns. And it just allows us to sharpen the targeting, the creative, campaign after campaign. And that's really visibility that you can't get when running on other digital marketing channels. So that's the kind of data so far. What I wanted to touch on next was really the levers or the learnings, the things that we've actually been working on over time to make sure that we are improving our campaigns as we run them and making sure that we're pushing that return higher. So I'm going to be touching on the targeting that we use, the data that we use for the campaigns, what we've learned from device targeting, and also creative sizes as well. So the first lever that I wanted to speak about is the targeting itself. And I would say the first real learning that we've had from running these campaigns is that no single strategy on its own when it comes to the targeting is going to get you the return that you're after. So when we set up campaigns, we basically run 4 different layers of targeting together, and each of them earn its place at the table for a different reason. So the first one that we always set up is a prospecting campaign, and the main lesson from the prospecting campaign is this is the one that provides the largest scale. So this is where we get most of our impressions. It comes from casting the widest possible net towards people who haven't necessarily engaged with your cinema or your movie yet. We use what's called audience profiling and also third-party data, which I'll come to in a second, to basically find people who look like moviegoers in your catchment area before they've ever shown you any interest at all. We then have contextual targeting. Again, this taught us something similar, but from a slightly different angle. So the way the contextual targeting works is we will basically place your ad where the content itself is already matching the film. So for example, if we're promoting a superhero movie like Spider-Man Brand New Day, that ad is going to show up on fan sites that are talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They might be talking about Tom Holland and Zendaya, they might be talking about the director. Whatever it may be, the audience is already primed for exactly that kind of story before we've actually put the ad in front of them. So it's a really powerful way to actually target the ads. We then have the lookalike audiences, which pushes that same principle a little bit further. So this is where we take the data from your very best, most loyal customers, and then we let our system find what's called their digital twins. So it's people who live nearby, they might share the same buying habits, even though they've probably never bought a ticket from you before. The learning from that one is that the first party data that you guys already have is what makes this campaign really work. So say we're running a campaign for the new Insidious movie that's coming out. If you guys can hand us data on people who have seen the earlier titles and bought tickets for the earlier titles, or even just recent horror movies in general, we can build a really strong lookalike audience off the back of that data and actually find you a new audience off the back of that. And finally, we have the remarketing campaign. So this is the job that, the learning from this really is the job isn't done the moment that someone shows interest. we all know people can get distracted and they might not book a ticket after clicking on the ad or after seeing the ad. The remarketing ad will just give them a gentle nudge and remind them that they were interested, and it brings them back right when they're actually ready to make that purchase decision. On top of that, everything is geo-radius targeted, so none of this is ever reaching people who aren't likely to come to the cinema. We're only ever talking to people who are close enough to actually get in a car and drive to your cinemas. So the question at the bottom here is, which targeting strategy is the most efficient? And honestly, they're not really in competition with each other, and they're all doing different jobs, and we do feel like you need all four for a successful campaign, and that's really been one of our big learnings from this. But if we do look at the two ends of the funnel specifically, so the prospecting and the remarketing, the data is quite genuinely interesting. So for example, across 27 campaigns that I analysed, we had a prospecting spend of around $22,000. It generated just under 3.8 million impressions, nearly 12,000 conversions, and just under 600,000 in attributed revenue. So it was a roughly 27-to-1 return on ad spend. So really, really good impressions, but a really high return on ad spend as well. The remarketing, that spent a fraction of that budget, but it actually converted at a much higher rate, and it drove more revenue per dollar spent on the remarketing. By definition, we're only remarketing to people who have already raised their hand and declared an interest. But the prospecting creates the demand, the remarketing captures it. So if you starve either one of those, then you're breaking that funnel and you're not going to get the best results. So yeah, this is the mix that we've found actually works best with our campaigns. Now, I just wanted to quickly highlight this just to give you an idea of how the contextual targeting works. So here's what it actually looked like for an Odyssey campaign that we ran. So you can see that the ads were running inside entertainment and culture coverage sites. So things like Harper's Bazaar, Elle, Entertainment Weekly, Screen Rant, People, Deadline. Whatever people were already reading about the Odyssey movie, that contextual targeting was finding them and actually placing the ad in front of the reader in the exact moment they're thinking about the movie. So right message, right page, right moment, really powerful stuff. So the second lever is data. So none of what I've just previously spoke about actually works if we don't have the right data to work with. None of it is guesswork. It's basically built by blending two very different types of data, but neither one on its own is going to get you the results that you've been looking at. We really need both parts of these to get the best out of your campaigns. So the first party data, this is the real powerful stuff. This is what you guys own. It's your own cinema admissions. It's your ticketing data, your loyalty data, your CRM data. It's much smaller in scale than anything that we can use in the platform that's built into our DSP, but it's the most accurate signal that you guys actually have. And it's really what fuels our retargeting and also our lookalike campaigns as well, which are obviously quite low down on the funnel. The third party data is where our DSP takes over. So the DSP is just where we buy the ad placements. Within the DSP, we have over 150,000 ready-made audience lists, and these come from really, really recognizable data partners, people like ComScore, people like Nielsen, Foursquare, and this is best used for top of the funnel reach. So we can find audiences based on their interests, their profiles, their demographics. So we're finding people who look like moviegoers before they've shown any interest in the movie or the cinema itself. So we're basically using your local expertise with our global reach. And as a result of that data combination, that's where we're getting the really powerful return on ad spend results. Now, sorry if that's a little bit small, but again, I just wanted to highlight the third-party data catalog and how that actually works. So on the slide here, you can see I've just typed in Spider-Man movie, and then what basically happens is this will return thousands of pre-built audiences in literally seconds that we can then use as part of our campaigns. Each one is scored for relevance, and they're sized anywhere from under 1 million people to up to well over 100 million, depending on how tightly you want to define the audience. And it's not just broad demographics, we can get really specific. So, if you were running a Paw Patrol campaign, we can target families with young children. If it's, running a campaign for Spa Weekend, which is coming out, women who like comedy movies, we can really get quite specific with the audiences that we're finding within our third-party data catalogue. So whatever title it is, there's almost always an audience that's built exactly for the kind of person that you want to see it. None of this is extra work on your end either. This is all running in the background of every single campaign that we actually manage as well. So you do get the benefit from this. The third lever I wanted to just kind of touch on was devices. So just to quickly touch on the data here, you can see that mobile delivered 5.9 million impressions, a cost per acquisition of just over $1, and a 24-to-1 return on ad spend. Desktop delivered 3.6 million impressions, $1.41 cost per acquisition, and a 17-to-1 return on ad spend. Both numbers comfortably ahead of what's usually a strong benchmark across digital advertising. But there is a few things that I think we can explain why mobile does get the edge when it comes to how these campaigns perform. So firstly, desktop pages are a little bit easier to tune out ads on. So, we've all been used to seeing years of sidebar banners, and we've been trained over time to subconsciously skip that part of the page. And there's often more than one ad competing for your attention on a desktop page as well. Even on a big monitor, a larger ad is still a small fraction of what's on your screen. By contrast, a mobile ad takes up more of what you're actually looking at, and there's a mindset difference too. If someone's on the phone, they're probably already asking themselves what they're doing tonight or what they're doing at the weekend. Someone at a desktop is usually mid-task and maybe not thinking about the cinema at all. So that's probably why we are seeing a bit of a difference when it comes to mobile and desktop performance. So our main learning from this has been that both devices are contributing. We're not cutting either one, we are still targeting both, but we are weighting the spend of ad budget a bit more towards mobile, as we have seen the better performance on that device type. Okay, fourth and final lever that I just wanted to touch on is the creatives themselves. The most interesting thing here has been that the bigger canvas has been our best performing ad size. So the 300 by 600 half page format. It's had the best click-through rates and also the best return on ad spend among our higher volume formats. And again, it's also the one that's primed or most suited to the MediaKoi format as well, which I will touch on a little bit more in a second. The 300 by 250, which is the medium rectangle, this has been the real workhorse of our campaigns. A little bit of a lower click-through rate with these ads, but they're everywhere on the open web, and they're often a lot cheaper than the half-page ads as well. So they carry a huge share of volume, and they do so pretty efficiently with the CPMs. The 728 by 90s, which is the leaderboards, and the 320s by 50s, which is the mobile banner. We would classify these as slightly weaker performers in the mix of ads that we've tested, but we found them to be really useful for reach and also for viewability as well, mainly because they tend to load at the top of a page. So if a page loads, pretty much everyone has seen that ad because it is right at the top, but it's probably not where we would put incremental budget. We would probably prioritize those other two sizes ahead of the 728 by 90 and 320 by 50. So the 300 by 600, as I mentioned, this is the one that's kind of most suited to the MediaKoi format. And I just wanted to show you a couple of what these things look like in practice. So just the first one here, which is obviously an ad for the Crow, you can see we can do some pretty cool things where we have this kind of, moving background. So rather than a static image, the ad is constantly moving back and forth. Again, just adding that little bit of extra engagement that you wouldn't necessarily get from a static image ad. We then have this Transformers ad, which uses a kind of rotating panel. And this is really useful if you have numerous creatives that you want to highlight, whether it's cast members, whether it's characters, like in this case, or again, coming back to if you have a specific menu item or loyalty program, you can use the rotating panels to really highlight those as well. And then finally, you can see here, this one's pretty cool with the kind of blood animation running down the page, but there is also an integrated AI chatbot into this ad. So I ask the user where they want to see the movie. The user then puts in where they want to see it. The AI chatbot then asks them what location, or sorry, what day, and then the user goes back and says whenever, and then it will come back and actually return the show times for the user. So yeah, we can actually set up an AI chatbot that allows the user to actually interact with the ad in that manner as well. So yeah, we can do some really cool things with the ads. Yeah, it's been a really powerful tool and basically adding extra engagement to these campaigns. And yeah, we've been really pleased with the results that we've been seeing. So I'm going to hand it back to Laureen, who is just going to pick up and hopefully just bring us home.
Yes, I'll just, thanks, Mark, for changing the slide. So yeah, I'm sure you all have some questions. Thanks to the few people who have asked questions in the chat already. Before we move to the Q&A, I just wanted to have a quick look at what we're going to do over the next few months. So as Malcolm explained, we launched a few months ago the Cinema Advertising Network, which we call CAN, which enables studios to run film campaigns. So they're funded by the studios, with participating exhibitors that have joined the network. And so to build on what was said earlier, the idea behind the network is really to bridge the industry gap between the studios and the exhibitors. So one of our objectives for the next few months will be to extend the network in the US, to expand it and to give studios greater reach across the US market, and ultimately help drive even more awareness, even more engagement around their releases. In the UK and in Europe, we're planning on launching the network by the end of the year, so we'll get in touch very shortly about this. And Malcolm, if you can just click on this slide. Thank you very much. So that was the Cinema Advertising Network, but that being said, if you are an exhibitor, there is also an option. So while you can choose to go to the CAN route, we can also work directly with you on campaigns funded by your cinemas. So that gives you a bit more control over the campaign itself, and it allows you to promote your own experiences and your own events. So the campaign doesn't have to be tied to a specific film, but can instead be built around your brand, really. And yeah, just so you know, we're already working directly with exhibitors across the US, in Europe, LATAM, the UK. So if that's something you'd like to explore, of course, let us know and we'll be happy to have a conversation about it as well. And I think that's it for the main part of the presentation. That was quite a lot of information, everyone. I hope we managed to keep you with us and that everything was clear and easy to follow. So we'll just move to the Q&A now. I'll start with the questions that I already saw in the chat. So the first one that I got would be for you, Graham. So based on the blended return on ad spend of 17:1 that we talked about, are there instances where we have single-digit return on ad spend? And are there some where we have one below 1:1?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, there's definitely been campaigns where we are more around 5:1, 6:1, 7:1 return on ad spend. They're not all making 48:1 return on ad spend. Obviously, the quality of the movie and how much anticipation there is for a movie does play a part in this. I would say some of our more challenging campaigns have came from really niche titles where it might be a little bit difficult to find an audience for them. Again, that's probably where the biggest challenge comes from, and we would really rely on good quality first-party data in order to boost those types of campaigns, because using the third-party data to find niche audiences can be a bit of a challenge. In terms of whether we've had any under a 1:1 return on ad spend, I don't believe for a blended return on ad spend that we have had any below 1:1. Right. So yeah, it's never been that low. They have all provided some value to the cinemas.
I think, you know, I mean, obviously it fluctuates depending on demand, as Graham said, but the way we tend to work with our partners is that we'll look at it over a period of time. I mean, that blended 17:1 is an absolutely that's an average score. So obviously some are doing, like Spider-Man is doing really well. And I think when you look at it over time, you realize the value of what we're trying to do here. But yes, you're right. There will be ones which are a lot lower, and there will be ones that are a lot higher. That's just the way it works. And remember, we're working within the context, as Graham says, we're working in the context of bigger campaigns. So depending on how big the awareness is up here, Spider-Man's been promoting its Sony been promoting Spider-Man for months. We're coming in at the very last bit of the process when the showtimes are booked, and we're running campaigns maybe a week before release and then a week after release, to try and make sure that anyone who's thought about going to that film and hasn't taken that final step actually does make that booking. Yes.
Thanks very much,
Great.
Ryan, for this. Yeah, just wanted to point out, because I know Michelle did add a message in the chat about it. We just enabled your microphones and cameras, so if you'd like to say something, feel free to raise your hand, and also turn on your camera if you'd like to say hi. Please feel free. And so, Graham, you did mention first-party data in your answer, and we did have a question, which was, how do you collect first-party data from cinemas? And to what extent do the film studios have access to cinema customer data? And basically what kind of data that they have access to, like detailed conversion data, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, do we want to just do that in 3 separate questions?
Yeah, probably.
What was the first one again?
It was, how do you collect first-party data from
How
cinemas?
do we collect first-party data? Okay, so what we will do is we'll place a pixel on the cinema website, which basically allows us to track what users are interacting with on your web pages. So that allows us to build remarketing audiences off the back of that. Similarly, we'll also place the conversion pixel on the booking website, so we can actually measure how many sales we're getting as a result of that. In addition to that, we would it would be beneficial if you guys could actually provide us first-party data from your own systems. So whether that's email addresses, whatever it may be, from your CRM, from your sales system, whatever, those would be encrypted before we ever get them, and then they're uploaded into the system. In terms of the studio, they would never have access to that data. That remains only your data. No other cinema would be able to access that data either. It would strictly be used for only your campaigns. And then in terms of what data we do give to the studios, it is fairly limited. We give them impression data, we give them click data, and we give them the overall return on ad spend. We don't give them revenue figures or anything like that. Again, we can negotiate depending on what you want provided, but that's ultimately what we've done for the Odyssey campaign. It was just purely based on return on ad spend.
Yeah, I mean, we're governed by GDPR rules like everybody else, and we obviously adhere to that. And part of our agreement with every partner is that we will do that. We sign an agreement to that extent. So don't worry about your data.
And about the return on ad spend, actually, we had a question, which was, is there a correlation between how much a studio is spending on their entire ad campaign and what the return is? So they were giving the examples of Spider-Man and the Devil Wears Prada, for example. So Graham.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say the more data that you can feed the programmatic engine, then the better it can actually optimize for that campaign. But we have worked with some clients who only put in a couple of £100 per location, and we do get some really strong results off the back of that as well. I would ultimately say there isn't that much correlation between spend and return on ad spend. There might be slight benefits from spending more and actually having that additional data for the system to optimize towards, but we can certainly make it work with smaller budgets as well.
I think James's comment, actually, he's asking, is there a correlation between the spend on their total campaign? Is that right, James? I don't know whether you want to come on if you're still here. But
yes, yeah. That was my question was, like, with a 48 times return for Spider-Man versus a 16 times return for Devil Wears Prada, is it possible to correlate the fact that the Spider-Man marketing budget was probably triple what the Prada marketing budget was overall, right? So like if they're spending 100 million marketing Spider-Man and 30 million marketing Devil Wears Prada, is that why Spider-Man had an outsized correlation or return on your spend?
Yeah, I think of course there is going to be some. I don't know. We haven't got a precise correlation, but I think it stands to reason that a film that has a bigger overall marketing budget is generating more demand at the top end of the funnel. It's going to benefit what's going on at the bottom end of the funnel, and there's no question. I'm sure that's the case. I don't think we're not working in a vacuum. I think that's the way to think about it. But as I said a little bit earlier, it's about making sure that people take that last step, but we can also add to the awareness as well. And I think that's what we feel is the real value of this format on Programmatic.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you for your questions. We also have another one asking what platform we use for conversion and attribution measurement.
So that is from our demand side platform, or DSP, that we use. This is where we buy the ads themselves. So we generate the pixel within that, and we then give the pixel to you guys to install on your website. And that basically allows us to track when someone engages with the ad through to the conversion itself. So that will then pass that data back through to our DSP, so we can measure the impact of the ads. So it's all done through our DSP.
Thank you very much, Graham. I'm not sure if we had any other questions.
Yeah, Beata's asked to follow up.
Sorry?
There is a follow-up from Beata.
Oh yeah, just seeing it. Sorry. That's a very good question actually. Wouldn't the cinema lose out from such a campaign? I'll read the whole thing if that's okay. So at the moment, distributors pay cinemas to promote their movies, and the cinema also makes money from these campaigns. As a cinema, we also run our own programmatic campaigns with interactive creatives. Could this in any way negatively affect the business model where the cinema has its own valuable know-how?
There's again a few questions in there. I would say the relationship, we don't want to get in the way of the relationship between the studios and the cinemas. What we're really trying to do here is enable cinemas, either who don't have a relationship or two don't have the time to spend doing this. I mean, what we do is we fill a little bit of a gap, I think, between, we talk about the conversion gap, but actually there's a gap in the relationship, and it's mainly driven by time. Some cinemas don't have the resources to manage these campaigns themselves. They might outsource them. If you're lucky enough to have them in-house, that's fantastic. We're not here to get in the way of that relationship. We're here to enable and hopefully save everybody some time, because we'll deal with all the, certainly we're running a Cannes campaign. We'll deal with all the assets and the approvals from the client, from the studio. The cinemas literally have to do nothing except know that, or accept the campaign that we're offering, the studio's offering. So we would go, for example, Universal said, we'd like to talk to these cinemas. We went to those cinemas and we said, do you want to take this campaign? They said yes. We set it up and we got it going, and then we provided them with the results at the end, and obviously Universal got the results at the higher level as well. So we're really trying to sort of enable both studios and cinemas to run campaigns that are delivering results for both parties.
Thank you very much. I don't think we have any other questions from the audience. Everyone feel free to add one if something new came up, but we did prepare some questions in advance based on discussions we've had with clients in the past. We were thinking that maybe that could be of interest to you. So maybe Malcolm, you could answer that one. What is the minimum budget to run a campaign?
That's a relatively. It can be a little bit of a. It's not a one size fits all answer. We tend to talk in terms of around 250 to 350 per location as a starting budget, but that can go up or down depending on what's going on. And we can take campaigns down to almost to individual cinemas. So, for example, we're working with IMAX and other PLF providers, and we are looking at very specific cinemas. We're not doing blanket campaigns or anything like that. So yeah, about $250, $250, £200, €220, that sort of level is your starting point per location.
Thanks for this. I see, Rob, you pretty much asked this question. I guess this answers the first part of your question. And where do we sign up? Well, we can get in touch with you. You can also just contact us directly. We'll put our details just after this. I think it's Malcolm's details on the slide. But yeah, glad to hear that you're on board. And is there any other question? I don't know if we have much. I know we're over time.
Lorraine, it's worthwhile just saying for PAN members, if you're just you wouldn't. There's no cost to be part of the Cinerad network. As I said, that is studio-driven campaigns. If you want to do it yourself, we charge a management fee based on the percentage, which we'll talk about when we have a discussion. And then there's obviously the creative fee for using the MediaKoi platform. But it's scalable, so it's not sort of one big fat fee. It depends on how big the campaigns are. So we talk to you about that.
Thanks for the precision, Max. Just maybe one last question that we had prepared as well. Maybe Graham, one for you. Could you, like, how granular can the showtimes data be, basically?
Yeah, so I think Malcolm kind of touched on that there. That we can basically filter it to, for example, if you only wanted to display IMAX showtimes within an ad, if it was like an IMAX branded ad, then we can actually just filter it to IMAX specific showtimes. Similar if it was like a Dolby experience or something like that, then yeah, we can get quite granular that we're only displaying the showtimes that you really want to push, or the ones that you are advertising with a specific creative. So yeah, we are able to do that as well.
Thanks.
Right, we've got a bit over time, but is anyone else?
Anyone
else want to go and see the eclipse?
True. Just one last question.
Lorraine wants to go and see the eclipse, so know that.
Yes, very true. That's fine.
And I'd just like to say, if you are going to do it, please make sure you're wearing glasses. It's not good for you to look at the sun. Okay, I don't want anyone getting. I know you're blinded by the brilliance of MediaKoi and Programmatic, but I don't want you to be blinded by the eclipse either. So I hope everybody's sated with information. I mean, the purpose of this was to give you an update, and I hope we've achieved that. I'd personally like to thank Lorraine and Graham, who put a huge amount of effort into delivering this whole presentation. And if you've got any questions offline, just get in touch. You should have our number, and we will send you a transcript and a video of this whole presentation, and you can share that with your colleagues and friends in the industry. So unless there's anything else, should we call it there? Anyone else got anything they'd like to add? Don't be shy.
I can see people are starting to leave.
Yeah, okay. I think it's probably time to call it there. Have a great evening. Enjoy the eclipse if you're watching it, and
thanks, guys.
We will see you sometime. Thanks
Thank
again.
you so much, everyone. Have a good one.